So I want to go over very quickly what we covered in class on Wednesday, so this way you have that information, and hopefully you won't feel too far behind. So to start, hopefully a lot of this is kind of a refresher from your previous classes, but just to start, we're creating designs that's going to be 7 by 7. You do want to make sure that you have a bleed. So when you create your new document, you come up in here, you have a 7 by 7 in here, making sure you're in inches, and then all you really need for this is 1/8 of an inch. All right. Everything else, keep the CMYK. We're not rasterizing anything, but it's always good to keep that at 300. And then once you have that all set, even with the artboards, I'm going to show you how you can add artboards afterwards. So you hit create, and then anytime that you want something to go off the page, you bring it all the way to the red line. So if you wanted to, say, have a black background, you don't bring it just to the black line here, right? You would want to bring it all the way to the red line. So this way, if there's any kind of shifting involved in your design, you won't end up having a little bit of a sliver, right? So if it's just a little bit like this, that's going to look a little awkward once you have it all printed. So you just allow yourself to kind of go off on the side. Then you want to make sure that you have your margins, right? Generally, what you could do, just to kind of like as a default, you double whatever the bleed is. So if it's 1/8 of an inch, generally speaking, you're going to go to 1/4. But that's very small. I think you can definitely make, the margins a lot thicker and wider to just, instantly have a little bit of negative space around your entire design. So what you can do, if you're going to do like a 1/2 inch, say, we can change, well, just do it this way. We're going to go 6 inches by 6 inches, and then we're going to have it go right into the middle. So middle, and then command 5. So this way now we have our margins on the inside, we have plenty of negative space, and then our document is set up. Now when it comes time to making multiple artboards, the artboard tool is right here. So with this selected, you can then select multiple artboards. Let me pull in, oh, there it is. So then, in here we only have one artboard. If I hold option, you can see like my cursor has a little white arrow next to the black arrow, and I drag and I make a copy. So even if I end up having, multiple elements on the actual artboard itself, when I drag that over, whatever is in the artboard is going to be copied over. Except notice that our margins has not. The reason being is because it's locked. All right. So generally, what I'll end up doing is option command colon, and then you can see that you can select the actual guide. And so now when I make that copy, it copies over, and then I very quickly hit option command colon, and now both of those are locked. I can't select them. All right. When you are working, I talked to the class about making sure that you keep all of your design ideas, right? So as you're working out different ideas, you may end up saying, all right, I want to go in this direction. I want to have a different way of going. And then, you end up going into forking into 2 different ideas, and then one may work out and one may not. I don't want you ever deleting anything, because you want to have a reference for that. You want to look at what you've done and the progress that you've created. But you also sometimes will find that a solution comes later, right? So you have an idea, it's just not really working, it's not clicking, and then later on down the process, so you think of something. You think of, oh, you know what? Maybe if I do that, it will work. If you throw it away, it's gone forever, right? So what you do is, as you're working for throughout this, you end up having, a lot of different ideas scattered around, and then you want to say, all right, well, I'm now getting to a point where I'm zeroing in on what I want. I'm a big proponent on keeping everything in one document. You don't have to. If you want to have multiple documents, you totally can. I like to keep things very simple and very clean, and just worry about one file. But I also, when I'm working out different ideas, and I know that this idea, say, is just not going to work anymore, I want to remove it, but I don't want to delete what's inside it. So with the artboard tool, I can hit delete, and it will remove the artboard, but it will leave the artwork there in the gray area. So this way, at least, if down the road, I have an idea, or I want to revisit an idea that wasn't working, it's still there. I can go back in, and now I can bring that back into this document here, and then start working out those thoughts, right? So you want to make sure that you're keeping everything as you're going through and progressing your ideas and thoughts. All right, so you have a way of adding and removing artboards. Now you want to save your file. You can save it as an EPS file. You can save it as an AI file. I personally will save everything as a PDF. Again, it's because I want one file. And if I'm printing, right, I need to make sure that I have access to that when I go to print. I can't always print from Illustrator, whereas if I'm going to print from Acrobat, I have more options. So I will save my document as a PDF, right? So then when I save this, you go in here, and you want to make sure you use marks and bleeds, all right? With this checked off, you want to make sure trim marks, because right now we have bleeds, and I want to have trim marks to know where to cut this, all right? Make sure that since you have the bleeds already set up, utilize the bleed settings. Then you hit save, and then now when we look at that actual file, you'll see our document has the trim marks already in there for us, all right? As you're working, and then you shut everything down, if you want to continue working on this, it's not as simple as just double clicking the file anymore, right? We can go back into here, go up to recent, and then go into our untitled. That's fine. But in here we can right click, open with, and then go into our actual Illustrator file, and then it will open back up in Illustrator for us. I find that this method, over the years that I've been a designer, I've gone through a lot of iterations of Illustrator. And I have PDFs from client work that is a decade old, that they will come back and be like, oh, we really want to try and do this project. We worked with you a little while ago. Could we now do this? And I will have all my files saved this way, and then there's never been an issue opening that up. Sometimes there might be certain typefaces, obviously, that isn't loaded, but there's never been a complication where this file was created too long ago. It's quite stable to do it this way. Again, if you prefer to save everything as an AI file, and then when it comes time to print, you then save that file as a PDF. You do, if you already have a method that you thoroughly enjoy and it works for you, I'm not suggesting that you should abandon that. All right. Now, when it comes time to adding in text, one thing I want to make sure that you are doing is when you choose a typeface and you're saying, all right, this is what I'm thinking I'm going to be using, you want to make sure that you're seeing everything as all caps. Let me put this back into regular. And then title case. All right. So this way, when you are choosing a typeface, you're saying, all right, here's an idea that I got, then I want to maybe use a different typeface. And then, okay, that's, maybe an option. And then I want to use a different typeface. You can then very quickly see what all the text looks like for not only the caps, not only the minuscule, but you're seeing three very quick options for you as you're working through. All right. That's the thing that I asked the entire class to do. So you have your 9 words. I want you to choose typefaces that work for these 9 words. I think, let's see. I think I did. All right. Let's do, whoops. All right. We got this. Then I want all caps. And then I want title. All right. So I'm choosing a typeface and a treatment that's going to work for this word. All right. So then you got to find the antonym. So you have your 9 words. You pick out typefaces for them. If you decide that you want to have multiple ones, you totally can do that as well, right? Let's see. Sure. All right. So now it comes time. Now I need to find the antonym for this, and then is it going to be tiny? All right. And then this will be all caps. And then title case. And the same for this one here. Done. All right. So now the idea is you picked out a typeface for your word that you're actually working with. When you choose the antonym, it shouldn't really work, right? Looking at this, choosing a typeface, this really doesn't make sense, right? So now I want to choose a typeface that is going to make sense for this, right? Go in here. Maybe I want to do, where are you? Yeah. And then I want to do light. All right. So now I'm finding a typeface that actually makes sense for now the antonym. Okay. Once you go through this for all 9 of your words, then you're going to choose 5 of the antonyms. We're no longer using the 9 words that you picked to start with. That was just to kind of get the project going. So now you're moving forward. And when you come into class on Monday, I want to see this process for the 9 and then the 5 words that you're going to actually be working with. All right. All right. So that's adding in text, simply just clicking on the screen. Now, when you add text onto the screen, you have different options. So when you just simply click on the screen and type, you can see that it goes into the text line right here, and you have the bounding box, right? So you end up having these controls that you can then, increase and decrease the size. You can also rotate and move around. So this, when you're doing just a line of text, whether it's a word or just a simple sentence, this makes sense. It works. It's easy. It has a lot of options for you. The other way of inserting text is to click and drag and create a text box. All right. So now with this text box, you see the bounding box goes around what the text box is. If I increase and decrease the size of the text box, it doesn't affect the text inside, right? So as I make it smaller, I can crop into the letters, and then making it larger. Even if I try and rotate, it won't rotate the text. It would just rotate the actual text box itself. The reason being is that this method of adding in text is for paragraph text. Okay, so if I was to, let me drop this down to 12. All right. Oops. So I click and drag. You can see now this text is paragraph text, right? So now if I was to rotate this, it's rotating the actual text box. It's increasing and decreasing the text box, but not decreasing the actual type size. So it depends on what the method of adding the text and how you're going to be using it will determine the way that you're going to actually bring the text in. All right. All right. So now you could also create shapes for this text, right? It doesn't need to be just a square. So let's say I wanted to have a circle. So I'm going to use my ellipse tool. I'll draw a perfect circle. And then when I use the type tool and I hover over it, you can see that it goes from a square into a circle. That lets me know that I'm going to be typing inside a shape. So I click it, and now the text goes inside that actual shape itself. All right. It doesn't even need to be a perfect circle. If I use my pen tool and I create a shape, and then I go and click on the shape, you can see how that works itself into the actual shape that I created. Okay. Now let's say I want to type on a path. So if I use my pen tool and I create an arch and I want my text to go on this arch, with that arch selected, I can go to the type tool and then see how the type tool changes from a square and now has like a squiggly line through it. That lets me click on the actual path that then I can alter by changing the insertion point. Move this, and then this is the end point where you stop the type, and then the middle is what you use to go from one side to the next. Okay? All right, so now let's say we want to type on a perfect circle. All right, we don't want to type inside. We want to actually type on the outside. If I simply just try and click on this, it's going to assume I want to type inside it. All right, so this is the only time that you can't just select the main text. You have to hold and then select type on a path. Now, when I click on this, you can see that now runs all the way across. All right, and then you can see how I can change this to start there, and I can move this to there, so you can control where that stops and starts. This here controls to go from one end to the other, on the outside or on the inside. So if you're just simply going to be creating the text, so if I create a circle, but then it's not a complete circle, it's broken just slightly, then I go to my type tool, it will assume I want to type on the outside. So the only time that you can type on the inside of something is if it's a full shape that's closed. And then the only time that it will automatically assume you want to type on the outside is if it's open and not completely closed. All right? Okay. Good. All right. Next, converting text to outlines. So you have your type, and now you want to kind of tweak some of the letter forms. All right. What I'm going to do, we're going to make a copy of this, and I want to change up some of the stems on here. Actually, I think I want to make it caps. Okay, so with the text selected, you hit Command-Shift-O, and what that's going to do is going to convert to an outline for you. If I hit Command-Y and I look at the outline of everything, you can see that this is still text-based, right? I can click it, I can double-click it and change the actual text, where this is outlined, right? You can see all of the anchor points and Bezier curves that creates the letter forms. So this is no longer type. This is still type, but this is not. So one of the things I always recommend, and I still do to this day, I will take whatever word that I'm going to be changing into an outline, and I'll just simply copy it and throw it out into the gray area and ignore it. All right. Something like this, obviously you're going to remember what the typeface is, but there are times when you're working on a project and you're looking for unique typefaces and you're downloading different ones and installing them, and then you end up finding one that you really like, and then you change it to an outline, you start working on it, you're working on a project that's like becomes a little bit bigger, becomes a branding assignment, and you want to reuse that typeface, but the problem is this is the only reference you have, right? You forget what it was. Where if you throw it over here, even if you don't have it loaded in, it will be in pink. It will still tell you what the actual name of the typeface is, and then you can go back in and then reload it and install it, or even if it's just simply activating it. But you want to be able to go back to this. The other thing you want to utilize spell check. So once you convert to an outline, if you run spell check, it's not going to find any kind of issues. All right, so plenty of designers are probably not the best spellers, and me included. So you're going to definitely want to make sure that you're double checking your spelling before you convert to an outline. Okay, once it's an outline, now we can go in and use our selection tool. Right, our direct select tool here is going to be able to isolate parts of these letter forms. So if I select this and I can pull up, you can see you can distort all of these strokes of the actual letters. You can either drag in to select or just click, hold shift and click and then tweak. you can go in and select counters and delete. You can go in and select multiple and delete this way too. You can only do this once the type is converted into an outline. All right. Good. All right. So now Pathfinder. Let's do this. I'm going to convert this to an outline. Now each one of these is going to have different options when you are trying to create something. So let's say I want to have a couple lines to break this up and almost have it appear as if it's going to break. So I'm going to draw in a couple of these lines going all the way across, and then I'm going to select everything, and then I'm going to hit divide. So I hit divide, I'm going to ungroup, Command-Shift-G, and now everywhere that those lines intersected becomes separate. All right, if I hit Command-Y, you're going to see where those lines were. It's also going to have a lot of junk in here because it fills in any negative space. You can see it's a no fill, no stroke, but that's still in there. So it's always wise to go in and kind of clean up, some of the mess that's left behind. All right. Otherwise, if you didn't and you're just looking at this and like, all right, everything is good. Let's say for this project, you can't use color, but let's say you were like, all right, I like everything in the way it's looking. I'm going to come up in here and I'm going to now change it, to blue. And now you can see it's picking up all that extra negative space in there that you didn't want, right? So now, you're going to have to go in and, manually delete all of those elements. Okay. Some of the other things that you can do in here. So let's say I want to join the M and the A. You can see right now these are kind of overlapping. I select and I hit the Unite key, and now it's 1. All right. Let's say you didn't know if you wanted to have it united this way, right? If you hold Option and then click on this, right? Oops. Select this. Option. So now it's 1. Okay. But when you look at it, it's still 2. The reason it does that is you can double click into that group and move this around. So this way then, actually, you know what? There's a better to illustrate this. Let's do a rectangle with a stroke. And do this. All right. So the top, I'm going to just hit Unite. And then this one here, I'm going to hit Option, Unite. All right. So right off the bat, you can see they look identical. Okay. If I hit Command-Y, you can see that these are still 2 separate at the moment. So if I go in and I click it, it's grouped together. All right, this is already 1. I can't do anything with this. But this one, I decide, maybe I don't want it that much overlap. I can double click into that group and then adjust and then double click out, and it makes a change. This I can't do. Okay, so there are times where you might not know exactly what it is that you want with the Pathfinder, so you can use that Option click, and then it kind of gives you that temporary way of seeing what it's going to look like. Once you're set, then you go in and hit Expand. That now makes it solidified. Okay, all right. The other tools that you can look at that's very simple ways of doing something. Let's say that I was going to have, this be almost like a shadow. So I can have it sitting here. And then I go into my share. Where are you? Right here. And I can now simply just move that like so by holding the Shift. If I don't hold Shift and I move, excuse me, you can see how it gets a little funky. But if I hold Shift, then you can kind of control on a purely horizontal of that letter. Now with this, it's only going to give you that option to sit here as if it's still rich text. Okay, if it's not, let's say I convert it to an outline, so none of this is text anymore. I can still do the same method, but once I click on that same tool, this wants to go by default, goes to the middle, right? So if I end up doing this, you can see that it skews out to the middle. I can very easily just go in and then move everything back, right? But this works because that's where the insertion point is for the type. So when you're doing something, depending on what it is that you want to achieve, there are times you might even want to keep everything, as rich text. Okay? The same is true for other things, right? So let's say I wanted this to, flip. Where are you? Right here. Well, actually, wait. Rotate first. So I hit rotate, and you can see it puts it right there. So now, when I go to rotate, it keeps it right at the beginning of where that type was. This, if I want to rotate, you can see, by default, goes to the middle. So when it goes to the middle, all you need to do is you can click and move it to somewhere else within the actual layout, and now it rotates to that orientation, okay? Or point of reference, rather. Okay, good. The reflect tool, if you want to have something flip. So we get this, and we use this. So it sits in the middle. We hold shift and go across. If you don't hold shift and then you move, you can see how it gets a little funky. So a lot of these treatments that you do, you're going to definitely want to utilize the shift key to make sure things stay perfectly horizontal. Good. All right, so the only other three things that I kind of talked about were filters. So I'm all for letting software, technology as it evolves to make your life easier. Just because you can do something that might take you an hour, and if the computer can do it for you in seconds, it doesn't make it any less impressive because it's still your decision. However, it has to be your decision. If you end up using a filter, you have to know what it is that you're looking for. You have to know what you want it to look like. You are in control of what the design is, not necessarily just clicking a key and being like, rolling the dice and see what happens. Yeah, I guess I kind of like that. That's not the way to go. You want, in your mind, a clear understanding as to what you want the end result to look like, and then you force the computer to do that. All right? So, some of the things that you can do, because in class I used, let's get rid of these. I used twist, caps, and then, all right, so I want to have elements kind of like twist off of this, right? So in here, where are you? This. So right here, you have all these different options. Some of them, honestly, I don't think I've ever used and probably never will. The twirl tool, the warp tool, even the wrinkle tool. When I'm trying to do something that's like kind of like a little grungy, I will. I've never used pucker, bloat. You can see what those do. But the twirl is what I kind of want to focus on at the moment. So you have your text selected, and you come up in here, and then you click. You can see how it will distort some of the where you are. It's almost like a hurricane, kind of like working itself counterclockwise. But in this you can control what's happening here. When you want to change what the parameters of this tool does, you double click it. So in here you can control the size of the brush, the rate, and more the intensity, as it goes through as you're clicking. So each one of these, as you go through, you can see that there's different options in here. So you can see how it gets a little grungy. This one, again, I don't know. Maybe there's a use for it, but those are different options you have. Again, you have to have an idea as to what you want it to look like. And remember what the point of the project is. The point is to have someone look at this, see the type treatment that you're applying to the word, and instantly understand what's happening, right? So if you're just simply creating some sort of treatment that, maybe looks really cool, but it doesn't really represent the word, then it doesn't work, okay? All right, so that's one option you have. The other one Okay. Yeah, are different filters. So you come up in here, you go to effect, you go to warp, and then any one of these that you pick will get you into the actual filter use, because then you can change it as you go. So now with this, you can see that you can control the arcing of this. You go back in, you have a different way of having the top stay straight across. This one here goes up and down like a bridge. So each one of these is going to kind of give you an idea of what it is that you're trying to do. Now, when you do this, so let's say this is what I want to do, and it's sitting like this. This is still rich text. I can even go in here and then, add in, different text altogether. And it's automatically going to have that type treatment in there. Okay? The other thing, if I hit Command Y, you can see my type is still perfectly there. So what it's doing, it's kind of giving you the illusion of what it's going to look like, but it's not solidifying. Similar to using the Option click for the Pathfinder, it's not really saying this is exactly what it's going to be. It's showing you what it's going to ultimately be if you decide to do it this way. All right. There are times that you want to end up having different options, different type treatments on one word. So once you end up having something that you like, you're going to want to convert to an outline, and you can see how the rest of the text is still there. And then you want to go to Object and go to Expand Appearance. That's going to solidify this decision. So you click this, and now you can see that it's solidified, right? So let me put it side by side. This, Object, Expand Appearance, and you can see the difference between the two. It will look the same, but it's not. Now, in here, I can't do any other type treatment, but with this, I can now go back in and change it, right? So now I can add another type treatment to that. So there are times that you have an idea of what you want the text to look like, and it's not going to be a one-step solution. It's going to be a couple steps, okay? And then the only last thing that I showed, which may not be something that you end up doing, but I wanted to show it just in case. So let's say you want to have it almost kind of come out at us, right? So I want to kind of show some sort of perspective. So I'm going to convert to an outline. I'm going to go up to my effects. I'm going to go to 3D, and I'm going to go to classic. I wouldn't use, especially for this project, because one of the things I talked about was, the difference between vector and pixel based. So we're keeping everything vector. If you end up using any of these, it's going to be rasterized. So if we keep it in classic and we go to extrude and bevel, and remember, you can't have any grayscale. All right. So right off the bat, I'm going to turn off my depth. So that way then it's just the word itself. But in here, basically the blue is the side of what you have the text on, basically. And then you can come in here and then you can increase the perspective. So let's say we had a design that we wanted to do that maybe we ended up having, actually, you know what? Maybe I should have just did box. You end up having the B, O, and X. So now you can end up having the B kind of coming in here, do that treatment, then the O up top, and then the X is coming in this way. So this way then you control each of the letters on their own to kind of create that three-dimensional shape. All right? Same thing with this. Once you're all set with this, you're going to go up here and go to Expand Appearance, because right now, if I hit Command Y, it's still just sitting there as normal. All right? So we go up to Expand Appearance, and it solidifies that decision. All right? And that's really it. It took like a half hour to kind of go through these tools. Again, I was hoping that a lot of it was going to be kind of a review. But it was kind of just getting everybody going, because now, once everybody has their 5 words, everyone's going in different directions. All right, so choosing your typefaces, looking at ways of bringing in text. Remember where's that file? The examples I had. I had uploaded. You're going to definitely want to make sure that you bring, a little bit of text into your design. All right, so it's not just about the word itself, it's also how that word is working with, whether it's a definition or just a sentence regarding the word itself. But you want to think about ways that you can, introduce that line of text into your design. Okay? And that's it. That's all that you missed. But please, if you have any questions before Monday, reach out, and I'll try and get back to you as quickly as I can. But I hope I hope you both have a wonderful weekend.